trying to get Mallory on here. Mallory, I'm not sure if you requested yet to join. I saw that you are on. But as soon as you request, I will be able to add you. There we go. There we go. Connected. Thanks everyone for joining today. Sorry that we weren't able to have quarantine writing out. Mallory, hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Also, look at hi Rowan DeLong. I see that you're on here. Out of school, playing hooky. All right. So lots of folks from all over the world will join, which is great. Please do. We think these conversations are obviously relevant to everybody. But as I was saying, I'm gonna hi WSB. I'm gonna say again. Mallory is a Paralympic swimmer, gold medalist, who was expecting to be going. Oh, Mallory, turn your volume down a bit because they're going to get the echo of my voice, and I'll turn mine down.
That better?
Let me turn mine.
Trying to prop my phone so my microphone doesn't get covered, so we don't get that echo. Technology, right?
I know. All right, I think that's better. So this postponement of the 2020 Olympics to probably 2021, when they'll still be the 2020 Olympics, is, as I think a lot of us recognize, that for athletes, this is a jarring transition. I mean, it's unforeseen, until, even a month ago, I'm not sure when athletes started to think this might be happening. Maybe it was a month ago, but, spending, all of your life working to participate in these games and to be the best in your sport, and then to have that change suddenly, and still with a lot of uncertainty around it, it's both unforeseen, it's jarring, it's life-changing. And that might be a transition that is, very obviously life-changing to all of us, but most people are going through some kind of transition like that right now, or many of us are. Yeah. And and big uncertainty, and the possibility that we're going to have to reinvent ourselves or move into a new line of work. It's really hard to know. I mean, even just this is a small one, but my son's a senior in high school, and he's not going to finish his senior year of high school. Like, suddenly, it's so strange. He's done with high school, 4 months before you expect him to be. Like, probably no prom, no graduation. And, so many of us are going through that. So we wanted to talk about that a little bit. But I'd love to, Mallory, hear your perspective on, like, what has it been like for you? And what are the sort of transferable lessons here?
Of course. And, Amy, you bring up such a good point of, like, for your son, I think really what we're facing in our society right now, it's all in perspective for the life stage that you find yourself in, right? And so for a 17-year-old kid not having their senior prom or potentially high school graduation, that's a huge deal. And, in the Olympic and Paralympic space, we're facing the postponement of the games, which is uncharted territory. It's, very much so like what our entire society is facing. This has never happened before. We've never had this. And so, I think a lot of us kind of started knowing there would be conversations around the speculation of postponements. And obviously we were hoping for that rather than cancellation. Right. And I think we all in the athletic space kind of accepted that at different time periods throughout this, right? Like, so many of us were very much, as of a month ago, still putting our blinders on, thinking, you know what, going into games, every quad, there's always noise, put your blinders on, stay focused. And we were kind of trying to do that. And then the more noise that kept coming about, we realized, whoa, this is not like anything we've ever experienced. This is actually bigger than we all realize. And it's tough. It's really hard. The logic side of my brain says I know how to handle this. It's telling me, I was paralyzed when I was 18 years old. I faced plenty of adversity before. I've come out the other end. I know that this too shall pass. I know that I'm really grateful to be healthy, to have a roof over my head, to have food on my table at night. And I understand that those are all blessings that I need to be thankful for right now. But my heart hurts. And I think my heart hurts for the devastation I know our society as an entirety is facing. And it hurts for that perspective I was talking about life stage. You know, I've been pretty vocal in being very vulnerable and sharing my husband and I were looking to start a family after Tokyo this summer. And as a female athlete, knowing that that part of my life that I've already postponed and sacrificed for my career is being postponed again, it's tough. And so I think it's these stages of grief almost that our society's cycling through as we think through the logic of what it means maybe for our professional lives, but then think through the very emotional, heartfelt side of what it also means for our personal lives.
Right. And I think you brought up a number of things that I hadn't really thought about, but one of them was that, you know, we are kind of holding on to false hope. And I think, and I'm not sure if you said it exactly that way, but I think a lot of us, this is so unprecedented and was so impossible for us to imagine that we had to move toward it psychologically, even as the things were happening in the real world. Psychologically, we had to give ourselves like sort of space to go, what, really? What? You know, and to kind of let go. It's not like overnight you go, oh, okay, all right, well, this is how it is now. Of course, people are, I would say, innately optimistic. Like it is adaptive to hope for the best. And if we're still hoping for the best. What is the best now is different from what the best might have looked like 2 months ago. But first, I mean, to give yourself space to go through that transition in stages. And I see grief coming up a lot in what you said and in the comments that we're seeing. And I wanted to refer back to a piece that Lori Gottlieb wrote that came out on Tuesday. Lori wrote Maybe You Should Talk to Someone, which is a runaway bestseller right now. She is a psychotherapist, but writes about her time as a psychotherapist and in psychotherapy. And she's just a beautiful writer, but she also lost her father last week. And she wrote about grief and how one of the problems that we have when we're talking about grief, especially in a time when everyone is grieving in some way, is that we rank grievances. Like this one's more important than that one. And this person's grief deserves more attention than this person's grief. And when we get into that ranking, there's no way that we are going to be able to help each other and ourselves. So I think one is to just stop doing that. You know, like we're all going through something, and maybe some of them are worse than others. Nonetheless, grief is an emotional state, and grief is grief, right? And so let's give ourselves and each other some room to deal with that.
And that's such a powerful point too, where I think that as a society, we're noticing that we are all experiencing grief and we're ranking it. We truly, whether we realize it or not, I just did it when I said that my heart's broken, but I know it could be worse, and I know I'm fortunate.
That's what made me think of that. Is you're like, but I still have a roof over my head, and
yeah, and it is.
Yes, but that's it's still okay.
Yes,
to be feeling grief.
And I think
for your heart to hurt.
Of course, and giving ourselves permission to feel what it is that we're feeling right now in this moment, and not letting guilt compound onto the grief of, feeling, okay, I'm grieving this way, but now I feel guilty that I'm grieving because I have it good in comparison to what this could be. And that just creates this really difficult cycle. And so how do we stop that and, maybe allow ourselves to acknowledge, yes, here are the things that I have in my life right now that I'm holding on to and remaining grateful for, but it doesn't mean that my heart still doesn't hurt because of this.
Absolutely. And I've been thinking a lot lately about this idea, a book called Radical Acceptance by Tara Brach. And the idea is that people, when an intense emotion comes over you, people tend to want to do one of two things. They either grab onto it and kind of ruminate, or they want to push it away and not feel it. And Tara Brach's teaching people that you can't do either of those things. you have to actually experience it without holding on to it too tightly. Like let it kind of wash through you, and you will pass through that stage. But if you try to push it away and say, well, I don't deserve to feel that, or somebody else deserves to feel that more than I do, or I just don't want to have that bad feeling, or on the other end, if we ruminate and like really perseverate on that bad feeling, neither of those things allows us to actually process it. And that is, both of those things make it harder on ourselves. So again, about giving yourself the space, I would say, think of it that way, that when you feel that intense bad emotion or whatever it is, don't push it away. Don't hold on to it like it's your, new best friend. It's neither of those things. Just allow yourself to feel it. And also, we're home with each other. Some of us are alone, but we're having intense conversations, and we have to give each other space to have these ups and downs during the day right now, or during the week, where most of the day we're like, okay, we're dealing. And then we have moments where we're like, what? This is bizarre. Wait, I just went out and saw no one, and, just walking around the neighborhood, and oh my gosh, everything's different. And we have to allow ourselves to have those experiences as well.
Yeah. And
I just see somebody saying the most important, I worked with children's grief and loss in college. The most important thing is to listen. Just let the person speak about what they are feeling. The last thing you say is, welcome. Well, someone has it worse, right? The worst thing you can say is that. And I think that's so true. We can't judge each other's grief. And also we can't protect each other from those feelings.
Yeah. And it's that idea that the grief belongs to the griever, right? And how you are grieving through this, and how I and my husband and on down the line of everybody in our collective society, because this is unlike anything any of us have ever experienced. And, I know individual hardship. And obviously when I was paralyzed, it wasn't just something I worked through. It was something my family and my loved ones and my community worked through, and they grieved it just as much as I did. But this is something where everywhere we turn, to our left and right, and within our own community, across the borders of states, and everywhere, we're
all kinds of technical problems these days that I think we're going to have to laugh about someday. Okay, sorry.
It happens. So it happens when you're doing lives on your cell phones and selfie mode, trying to get everything.
And it's propped up on a stool and some books. And
I was gonna say, people should see this view right now. It's a stool with about 6-7
I know
coasters. But it's I think that one of the things I realized and really tried to hold on to during this time is, you can't compare paralysis to a quite literally worldwide pandemic. But in some regards, it's similar in the element. I learned when I was paralyzed at 18. I mean, I was quite young, but I learned a lot through that lesson of the fact that it's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to wake up in the morning and know that you're literally taking it hour by hour. And I think there's just such that element of, we as a society need to be gentle with ourselves. We need to give ourselves that permission to, today my goal is to get up, make my bed, get dressed, and do one task. And we don't know what tomorrow brings, and we don't know what 2 weeks from now brings. And that uncertainty is terrifying from a personal level. It's terrifying from a professional level, especially for leaders out there who are trying to lead teams right now, but yet they're in this space of not feeling like they even know how to lead themselves. And so then you question, like, if I can't get myself through the day, how am I supposed to get a team through the day? And I think there's just that element of, we're in uncharted territory. No matter who you are and how much experience you have, it's okay right now to just not have the answer, and giving ourselves permission to be okay with that. And I think that's one thing that I've really clung on to myself, is just, I turned 31 yesterday, and
happy birthday.
Thank you. And I was paralyzed when I was 18. So it's been just over 12 years now. And it's interesting how the life cycles bring back those lessons we've learned early in our lives. And in a lot of ways, I haven't had something really kind of shake me to my core and force me to tap into those lessons I learned 12 years ago in the way that I've had to just in the past 3 days. And I think there's, I don't know, I think it's just that element of that permission. No one has the answers right now. I mean, do you have it figured out?
I
Probably
totally
not.
figured out. No, just kidding. No, but what I don't, and I'm a psychologist. So I feel like I should have it figured out. But no one does.
Yeah.
But I think I have been thinking about sort of little things that, I'm a big fan of incremental change. I talk about tiny tweaks that we can change our. Sorry, my dog is who's happiest in the world? The dogs.
Oh my gosh, dogs.
The dogs are
Cats
very
might
happy.
be a little irritated. People are home. They're like, get out. We like our
exactly.
Alone. My dog had to be locked away. Not locked away. He's in my bedroom right now taking a nap.
Yeah, mine standing practically on my feet. So, but okay. So tiny changes. And yesterday, I think it was yesterday, Elizabeth Gilbert, the writer, posted. I thought it was a great video. She said, "I've been working remotely for 25 years, basically as a writer. So I'm kind of used to this situation, but to all of you who are panicking that you're not getting work done, and this is new to you, let me just give you 6 words of advice. Make your bed and get dressed." And that's where you start. If you can do that, you're going to feel pretty good. Because I saw a tweet that said, it's 8 p.m. time to change from your morning pajamas to your nighttime pajamas. Because I think a lot of us are spent the first week or so in that phase. So do give yourself space, but try to focus on tiny changes. What are you going to do tomorrow that's a little bit different from what you did today? You don't need to push yourself hard, but could you do a little bit more? So, I've been doing these quarantine writing hours most weekdays where we get hundreds or thousands of writers together online, talk about a writing tip, and then all simultaneously all over the world, we're writing for 50 minutes into 25-minute block, a 20-minute block, and then coming back together to discuss. And that 1 hour is amazing. I mean, to get that, even that 1 hour of work done, and we know we're going to be there. We have social support, we have structure, and we have accountability. That really helps. So if you can set something up with other people that who are doing similar work, or even not doing similar work, but who need to get some work done at the same time every day, do it on Zoom, do it however you need to do it. And make sure that you are, supporting each other and also accountable to each other. And that helps so much.
And I think that helps to start to create a little bit of routine. For so many people that aren't used to working from home, you're used to going into an office and you have your morning routine before you leave your home, before you go to work. And once you get to your office, there's a routine that goes with that, right? Like, we're creatures of habit. And so there's that element of the accountability of joining in numbers, but it also kind of starts creating an element of routine each day. And my husband and I, when we're not traveling, we work from home. And most of my routine is anchored around what time I'm training at. So there's that. So my routine's a little off. I'm not starting the day in a pool at 7 a.m., which is a little weird, but how you find your point, just those little tweaks each day. And sitting down and planning out the night before what it is that you want to try to accomplish the following day. And even if there's only 4 or 5 things on that to-do list, just to kind of help you orient what your day is going to look like, to establish a little bit of routine throughout. And during this time, I try to make it a habit. And it's depending on how busy my weeks get, and if I have early morning practice and I'm a little tired and snooze a few too many times, I don't always get it done. But throughout the past few weeks, I've been really religious about every morning getting up and taking that time to kind of write 3 intentions for the day and what's my big goal for the day, whether it's just listening to my heart or a task I want to accomplish. And just taking a minute to have that gratitude. And I feel it jumpstarts a day when there's so many things out of our control. It allows us to kind of have those 5-10 minutes to really hone in and listen to our head and our heart and kind of create control amongst the chaos.
So what can I ask you? And sorry, I just saw another quote here that I've heard before. We don't move on from grief; we move forward with it. And I think that's another good way to understand this.
Yeah.
But can I ask you, like, what are you said 3 intentions. Can you give us some examples of what the intentions are?
Yeah. So some days it will be, maybe it's goal oriented on something that I'm trying to attack. I know I have a workout, although I'm not going to a facility, I've created a nice kind of makeshift gym in my garage.
Okay.
Where I've got a swim bench, so I'm kind of swimming on land. So maybe one of those intentions is, being really mindful about attacking the follow through and the stroke of my swim on land. Maybe it's one of those. Maybe it's as simple as the other day, I was really having a hard time with the personal aspect of the announcement of the postponement. I felt as if, I was grieving this hypothetical loss of knowing we were going to try to have a family after the games. And yesterday was my birthday, and I envisioned by my 32nd birthday, if all went well, I would maybe be pregnant and starting to build a family. And I know all that's hypothetical, because we all know that it doesn't necessarily work that perfectly for everybody until you start trying to have kids. But it felt like a little bit of a loss that I was experiencing. And so one of my intentions was to give myself permission to feel, because my head always tries to control where my heart is and tell me, no, logically you need to, here's the path and all the reasons why I should be controlling the situation of looking at a year as an opportunity. And so one of my intentions for the day was giving myself that permission to feel the emotions that I was experiencing. So it depends. Some are goal oriented, some are just very much, some are as simple as I want to enjoy my evening with my husband and turn work off by a certain time, and I'm going to be mindful and present and have a nice dinner with my husband. Some are very simple in that regard.
Like that.
Yeah.
So we've got letting not ranking grief.
Yeah.
Allowing yourself and others to feel the emotions, to not push them away, not hold on to them too tightly, having some kind of schedule, starting with these intentions, or maybe intentions and a goal for the day. Right? So a lot of these things are around, incremental change, acceptance of the state that you're in. And one of the things you said I thought was interesting is, and I've thought about this in another context before, is the loss of an imagined future or a planned future, right? So that future, the version of the future that you had anticipated, it's not going to play out that way. And there's nothing you can do to change that, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you won't have a future that's equally great. It's just not the one that you planned on. And I've talked about this in the context. So I had a very serious head injury at age 19, where I was, thrown out of a car going 80 miles per hour, and was in the hospital for a long time, and, withdrawn from college, and it took me 4 extra years to finish. And that was a real identity loss. Sorry, there were a couple of things that I wanted to say about that tied to what you said, but a big part of it, I think whenever I start talking about that, I feel like I could go in a million directions, but was the loss of an imagined future, right? So I wasn't the same, because that kind of head injury changes you in almost every way. Because and sorry to those of you who heard me talking about this the other night, but if think of the brain as an onion with multiple layers, and each layer is a different density. And so when you have a head injury, an acceleration or deceleration injury, where you're stopping very suddenly and the brain is shaking against the inside of the skull, those layers of the brain are moving at different speeds. And so the axonal connections among them are being torn. And that means it's not an injury to a specific location. It's an injury, they call it a diffuse axonal injury. It's all over the brain. So your emotions change, your personality changes a bit, your cognitive abilities in unexpected ways. And so you're never going to get back exactly to the person that you were before. But I was holding on tightly to the person that I was before, and the future that I thought that person had. And I always say I had to break up with myself, with my old self, to become my new self. But I had to break up with myself before there was another option out there. And it's a little bit like, maybe when we're younger and we were dating someone and it wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. We kind of knew it wasn't going to go anywhere, but we didn't leave because we didn't know what else was out there. And sometimes you just have to say, this isn't terrible, but I know it's not right, and I have to let go of it now. And then only then can you see your new future, right? So a little bit eventually, and maybe we're not there yet, we're going to have to break up with the imagined future in order to see the real future. And I'm not saying that we all should be there yet. And Mallory, obviously you acutely went through that at 18,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
As well.
And when you're talking about that, I was just going back to that same thing of the idea that breaking up almost with your past. It's this element of, for almost 19 years of my life, I lived one way and thought my future was going to be this way. And then in literally the blink of an eye, I was paralyzed, and putting on a pair of pants was this huge obstacle day in and day out. And just, learning to sit up and eat again, and all these little things you never think twice about. And I found, similarly to you, this idea for me, it was, I didn't want to fully break up with my past because there was an identity within that. Like, that was a part of who I was. I was, this kind of, as a kid, like socially awkward teenager that was super outgoing with my friends and family, but super shy in large social settings, and always had this kind of goofy charisma. And there were parts of that were still very much intact in who I was after my injury. But there was almost this element of, I had to find a way to bridge the two. I had to find a way to be okay with letting go of certain things so I could move into what it was I was supposed to become. And it's kind of that idea of allowing the obstacle to be the way, right? And thinking of, as we face these adversities and these circumstances in our lives, allowing ourselves to, like you were saying, let those moments wash through us. You can't hold on too tight, though. And you also can't push it away too hard, because you do have to allow it to kind of happen, while being able to realize that there is that grief in the imagined or the future you thought you may have. Or as we're all experiencing this, there's weddings that are being missed. There's funerals, births. I mean, goodness, you think of the women that are currently pregnant and are going to be potentially going into labor alone. And that just breaks my heart. Or the children that are missing their friends in school, and no grief is small, right? We have to get away from ranking it and understand that we're all grieving. And I think there's just that element of, we're all going to grieve this at a different pace, and giving ourselves permission for that. And then also understanding that this will help shape us into who we're going to become afterwards, and allowing that to be okay, and not let the circumstance we find ourselves in define who we are or what we'll become. But understanding that it will become a part of who we are. It doesn't have to define us, but it will certainly become a part of that fabric.
I think, and that idea that it is going to shape who we are in some positive ways. It's funny, people have been, like a week ago, I saw some tweets about that, like, we're going to be better after this. And I noticed that most people were not ready for that yet. To think of it that way. And so there was a lot of like, huh? Really? Like, too soon to say that. But it is true. And I think sort of accepting that we're gonna be different and better in some ways, but we don't have to think about it too much yet, like what that's gonna look like. But that is true, is I think to leave it there as acceptance without a deep dive into exploring it is a little bit reassuring to me, to know that we're probably going to be stronger and more agile as individuals. I think we're going to be stronger and more agile as a society, and how we are mindful of each other, and just things like noticing the people, like honestly noticing the people who are checking out your groceries, right? Noticing them. Noticing everyone as a human, not categorizing ourselves as, well, I do this and they do this and we won't understand each other. Suddenly we have a shared experience that's superordinate to all of these other things, and we see each other. And I hope that I will not stop doing that when this is over, that I will continue to see people as human. I think this is a really great lesson for us, a reminder for us, and a great lesson for our kids. I've always said, the most important thing to me with raising a child was that, I'm not controlling, But when someone is serving him, he needs to see that person, look them in the eye, recognize them as a human, and thank them. Like that if you can do that, you're on the right track. And I think we're all going to get better at doing that.
I heard a few years back, I was at an event where former President Bill Clinton was speaking, and he shared a story about a village in Africa that he was in. And I don't remember in their village dialect what the phrase was, but it equated to, "I see you." And every time they walked by one another in the village, they would look up eye to eye at one another and say this phrase that the essence of it meant, "I see you."
Good.
It's this element that as human beings, we are all one. We are all alike, and no one individual is more important than the next. And to your point, slowing down and seeing people and understanding that we are all, quite literally, all of us are in this together, and nobody is immune to what our world is facing at this moment. And so we need to let that be a little bit of, a humbling factor to slow us down and realize that we are all in this. You're in this, I'm in it. We're in different parts of the country. There's people from all over the world, and it's one thing that we can all come together and relate on. And hopefully that is a lasting impact. You look at adversity and, it's hard. You don't want to rush to, like you were saying, you kind of have this awareness of acceptance, but if you rush too fast to find the positivity, that can be damaging as well. But you certainly can hopefully start foreshadowing and say, maybe this can be what we look to in 6 months or 12 months and look back and say,
Right.
That was really tough, but look at what came out of it.
You can't, if you rush, I think a couple of things can happen. One is that you then attach yourself to another future that's not going to happen, because things are going to continue to change. We're still in the midst of the change. I mean, things are going to, state by state, things are changing.
Yeah.
And so we can't lock onto another imagined future that we don't know, we don't know yet. But we also get resentful, I think, when we lock onto that kind of thing and it doesn't happen the way we want it to. I see how are Olympic athletes handling resilience now with training going another year before Tokyo? And we talked a bit about that, but I'd love to, I think that's a great question from Jamie.
Yeah, that is it's a very real question. I was speaking with somebody the other day and I said, I'm games ready right now. I'm ready to go physically, mentally, emotionally. Everything in me is ready to compete now. And so trying to hold on to that intensity for another year is really, really difficult. Yeah. And how do you find a way to keep the intensity going while not burning out, whether it be physically or mentally or emotionally? And so it's tough. I will say it's tough, but I think for me, at least, I've stepped back. I've allowed myself to find a way, and I know I'm doing what I just said we got to be careful of, but as an athlete, I'm working really hard at finding a way to see this as an opportunity. And what opportunities do I now have by having an extra year that I didn't have if the games were to have happened this summer? And so what things can I focus on right now that still allow me to fulfill that need of giving my heart the permission to feel what I need to feel, while also doing what I need to do in my athletic career to not completely crumble into a mess and hold on to this, because I do have to stay focused on what I can control and keep moving forward, because a year is still not a whole lot of time. And if we lose focus too much during this time, we're going to set ourselves back rather than keep ourselves kind of in momentum moving towards that new goal that's been put for us. Right. And so I think for me, the biggest thing I've been really focusing on is that element of controlling what I can. And like, I loved the mention you made of the tiny tweaks. And in my frame of reference, I always talk about them as the little baby steps, and doing what I can today to put me in a better position tomorrow. So that way by next week, I can be in kind of the area that I need to be, in the headspace I need to be to keep conquering this. So when facilities open back up, I'm ready to hit training hard and get my head back in that headspace of, all right, it's a games year. We've got a year to go. Let's do this. But it's challenging. It's a battle. And I was talking to my husband the other night. I was sitting down. I poured myself a glass of wine, because normally 6 months before games, I go dry for training. And I guess I have more than 6 months. So I poured myself a glass of wine, and I had my glass of wine and we were cheersing. It was my birthday. And I was like, oh my goodness, the idea that I'm drinking this means I'm still probably 6 months out from my normal dry window.
Wow.
And I was like, every inch of my body hurts right now, thinking of how much training I still have when my mind was so ready to just relax and take a deep breath this fall. But it's that element of, we all know changing environments, and we've all experienced it in some way, shape, or form in our lives, where we've gone into one thing thinking it was going to be one way and it turned out to be another. And I think there's that element of, I'm trying really hard from an athletic standpoint to allow myself that idea of feeling, but also getting away from that a little bit and choosing to respond to change rather than react to the change. And I mean that in the element of, I've been trying really hard to slow down and let myself kind of methodically think through it and come up with, rather than just a knee-jerk reaction to what's going on around me. And that's been incredibly helpful. It's allowed me to keep training the way I need to. It's allowed me to keep my head on my shoulders. And although there's still a lot of uncertainty, it's allowed me to feel as if I have a little bit of control, at least over the things that I can control in this moment.
I love that, right? Responding and not reacting. There's so much to that. I mean, one thing is, that occurs to me as you say that is that idea that you're working toward this intense goal, and you are putting a lot of intensity into it, and you're also looking forward to the relief of it being behind you. There are so many forms of that, right? So like juniors in high school who are like looking forward to applying to colleges, and they're working really hard. They were working really hard in school, and who knows what they're going to have to do next year to get back on track again. But they're looking forward to that being over. Or somebody who's wanting to defend their dissertation or getting married, but you're something intense that you are anticipating and looking forward to, but also looking forward to having behind you. That's another commonality. One thing I do hope that people, and I think we have to sign up pretty soon, that one thing I hope people take from all of this is not just patience with oneself, but with the unexpected changes, the constantly changing world that everyone is living in. Each one of us, our lives, it's an idiosyncratic world, and things change in it. Many of us are caregivers. They talk about this with the sandwich generation, people caring for parents and children. All of those things lead to unexpected changes in people's lives. And I think, as leaders, as managers, as employers, we need to be so much more tolerant of those kinds of changes. It may not be a change that's affecting us, but changes that affect the people who work with or for us in their lives. They can't control it. It's not what they chose, but we need to be more understanding. So I'm really hoping that we see changes in workplace, just sort of decency and kindness and generosity of spirit.
And I think to that, Amy, too, the element of vulnerability. I mean, right now we've talked about the array of emotions everyone is going through and the various different circumstances they're facing as a result of what we're all experiencing together. And, whether you're a team leader or wherever you're at in your life, finding that ability to allow yourself to be vulnerable in effort to connect with others. And I do always say that, vulnerability is ultimately what makes us the most connectable as human beings. And, whether you're a team leader, having that patience that you're talking about and that understanding and realizing that vulnerability, it's not a weakness. It's something that brings us together and helps us relate and connect with one another. So that way, as a team, we can be more resilient to the changing environment around us. And so I think that's such an important part of this as well, with that patience, is also that ability to be vulnerable and say, you know what, today this is where I'm at. And it's kind of owning where you're at in that cycle of grief or emotion that you find yourself in. So that way you can come together as a team and kind of find that team flow so you can tackle the current challenge you're facing, whether that team is your professional team in the office, whether it's your home team at home and your family, wherever that team may be, just kind of allowing one another to have that patience with each other while also owning where you're at so you can become more resilient as a team while we face this.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're going to be wrapping up. I was, Mallory, the other night on with Amy Purdy, and we got cut off after an hour. It just said, okay, thank you. And we were like in the middle of a really intense topic, and I know we're not quite there yet, but I don't want that to happen. That did happen to us. Instagram only allows you to go live for 60 minutes, just FYI, everyone else out there. This was great talking to you and, hearing your perspective on all of this and how it transfers to so many other people who aren't, experiencing the same loss that you are of the Olympic and Paralympic Games. We hope that we offered you everyone some tips about how to deal with this changing environment that changes our imagined futures, our identities, just about everything. Be easy on yourself. Give yourself a little bit of structure. Allow yourself to feel emotions. Allow others to feel emotions, and give yourself some time before you let go of this imagined future. You have to let yourself adjust to it slowly, and that's okay. And I think we'll all be checking in as often as we can. Thanks to everyone for joining. And yeah, Mallory, thank you so much. It was just such a pleasure to talk to you.
Yes, it was wonderful to chat with you as well. And I appreciate everybody who tuned in, and I appreciate you taking the time. And, I think I hope everybody stays safe, stays healthy. And if anything, this is something that's going to bring us all together, hopefully, in the end. And like you said, maybe we'll see each other a little bit differently when this is all over. And
I just look forward to seeing people in person.
I know. I'm like, I want to give people hugs.
It would be great to meet you in
Everything's
person
6 feet distance. It's very difficult. You want to just wrap everybody up who's hurting and give them a big hug, and you can't. But we have other ways. And thank goodness for technology, because we're able to do things like this. So
absolutely.
Yes.
And go back to the basics. I think talking about these things will be so helpful when things get back on track. We're going to be having conversations like this in the workplace.
Yes.
We're going to just step back a bit, and I think that's good. It might redirect us a bit, but anyway,
a whole other conversation.
Thanks to everybody, and take care of yourselves. Have a good weekend, and we'll all try to check in again later in the next couple of weeks. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.